So we'll move on and have a conversation now with Mazi Sam Ohuabunwa, the president of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria. Mazi Sam Ohuabunwa, are you with us? Good morning.
Hello, Dr. Ruben. How are you today?
Good morning, Mr.
Fine,
Ohuabunwa.
thank you. Well, quickly, we're hoping to discuss with you this morning what seems to be some kind of a confusion with regard to the clinical trials involving hydroxychloroquine. WHO has said that based on a report in the medical journal The Lancet, is taken out for temporarily for about a week or two hydroxychloroquine from the set of drugs being tested under the Global Solidarity Trial. However, yesterday we had Professor Adeyeye of NAFDAC Nigeria saying that Nigeria is still going to go ahead with clinical trials involving hydroxychloroquine. Is there a confusion here? Is Nigeria pulling out of the WHO Solidarity Trial? Or this is standard practice for countries on matters like this to go their own way and ignore WHO advice?
Well, first and foremost, it depends on who is sponsoring the trial. I believe that nations have a right to try any product, either for registration or for use or for whatever in their own territory. The FDA of the United States of America is the one that approves drugs and trials in the United States. The NAFDAC of Nigeria is the one that approves trials, registration, and use and limitation and non-use of any medicine. So, in principle, Nigerian government can continue their trial if the trial is sponsored by them. If they are the one who initiated the trial, they have the freedom to continue to try. But if it was initiated by WHO and is sponsored by the WHO, then they have an obligation to obey WHO demands. But if the trial is independently being run by Nigeria, it's not being sponsored by WHO, WHO is advisory. WHO does not approve drugs. It's not in their place to approve drugs. They are not regulatory agents. They can recommend, they can advise, but they can support, they can set standards. But the regulatory agencies in nations like the FDA and NAFDAC are the ones who determine whether a trial can continue or whether a drug can be registered.
Thank you, Mr. Ohuabunwa, for that clarification on that. It's very helpful. Now, this temporary ban or suspension on hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine that the WHO have taken is, of course, based on empirical evidence. However, the WHO have also lost a lot of credibility, and a lot of people have lost their confidence in the WHO, with the United States, for example, calling for an independent investigation into how they handled the pandemic, and a lot of countries deciding that they are just going to take their own stance and really and truly ignore WHO directives. Do you think that the WHO has lost its credibility? And if so, how can it start to gain it back?
Well, I do not share that view that WHO has lost its credibility. It's certainly some opinion of the United States and maybe some other countries. I don't think. WHO has been a long-standing organization that has played very significant role in healthcare, global healthcare management, global healthcare advisory, global healthcare standards, from drug production through drug consumption, through drug vigilance, pharmacovigilance, through public health. And in all the ages, WHO has acquitted itself well. Yes, all of us know that coronavirus, as novel as it is, was novel in different characteristics, and nobody was 100% prepared for the way coronavirus and COVID has manifested globally. So one can be right to say, okay, everything hasn't been done perfectly or as well as everybody will wish. but I do not think that WHO has done so poorly as to lose confidence. WHO has always been advisory from ages. It advises nations, it recommends things. Unless there are agreements by nations regarding health issues, then it becomes like every United Nations recommendation. Every country has to domesticate those recommendations for them to be operative or operational in their climes. So I do not think WHO has done poorly. I do not subscribe to the fact that it has lost confidence. Of course, WHO itself has taken a preemptive decision to have a look at what it has done, to be able to see the areas it didn't do well enough and areas it could improve upon. For me, that's how every learning organization, every forward-looking organization will always do, because there's always room for improvement. There's always room for doing better than you have done. And the whole world, if anybody, it's like the story of where Jesus Christ asked the people who were accusing the woman of adultery to cast the stone first, if they were sinless. Who has done as much as this? Is it Trump? Which country can claim that it has done the best? Trump thought this was a passing phase, something that will come and go. Now America is in that big trouble, having the highest number of infections all over the world. So a kettle cannot be pointing at the pot or the pot pointing at the kettle. So I think that the furor about WHO is on end. I don't think they ought to get that kind of flack that America is promoting. I think it's just in style, the style of Trump. He's pulling out from every global organization. He's against multilateral arrangements. So every opportunity he sees, he pull out from any global grouping. So I'm not relying on him as being objective in this matter.
Well, Mazi Ohuabunwa, earlier on you referred to circumstances under which Nigeria could have decided to go ahead with his own clinical trials with regard to hydroxychloroquine. Do you have any information whether or not this decision is based on science? Because elsewhere, where there have been similar moves, the chief scientists and the relevant authorities refer to science. So are we dealing with scientific findings in Nigeria or just sheer nationalism?
Well, I see there are things that cause different responses to every drug. There are genetic differences, there are climatic, environmental differences that will affect the efficacy of the issues related to any drug side effects or adverse reactions. Africans, Nigerians have been used to chloroquine and its derivatives. So some of the side effects or adverse reactions you may be seeing elsewhere may not manifest in Africa. I remember once when I was CEO of Pfizer Nigeria, we launched a product that was effective in Europe and America. We launched it in Nigeria. It was not effective. But we now found out what was causing it, and we decided that it was because research showed it had to do with the makeup, our genetic makeup, our ability to manage sodium. So we added a diuretic to that product, and it became effective as antihypertensive. So there are differences. There are cultural differences, there are genetic differences, there are environmental differences that can affect either the therapeutic efficacy of a product or the side effects. So this is why yesterday I hope you heard that India itself came out and said, no, we are going on with our own trial. We have no problem with chloroquine. There are countries that have had malaria, that have had to deal with malaria. So I do not think it is based on nationalism as such. It must be science-based. Secondly, the Nigerian trial is just starting. So you can't abort it just when you're about to start. You're just starting the thing. You must try and see whether what other people are saying are true. And so there's a mixed result. Some people have found chloroquine useful. the issue of efficacy is the issue. Some say it's not effective. Some say it's more dangerous because of the elongation of the QT and the arrhythmias and tachycardias that it may cause. But in our climate, maybe we have gotten accustomed, we have got genetic balance and accommodation of that. So I think it's not nationalism, it's science, because NAFDAC has a database with which it registered all the chloroquine brands that were sold in this market and a few that are still being sold. So it's not nationalism, it's just that they want to be able to have their own data, as I said, with which they can support the approval of hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine for the management of COVID-19. Remember that in Nigeria it was approved for managing malaria. In other countries it's approved for managing lupus erythematosus. It's approved for managing other autoimmune diseases. So for those ones, there is no issue. It's just the issue of is there going to be a risk-benefit ratio that should make this product to be repurposed for the purposes of managing COVID-19. So I think that NAFDAC is doing the right thing to see that the trials go through. And then we know whether the evidence will show, because clinical trial is being done in a randomized manner, and after which we will determine whether we should say it works well and is safe for COVID-19, or we should leave it where it was before and use the malaria, exceptional cases in malaria.
Thank you, Mr. Ohuabunwa. And just quickly to also quote Professor Adeyeye from yesterday, she did say that this decision is based on data. Now, I wanted to ask you, since the last time you were on the show, we've had more time to really and truly assess the pattern of COVID-19 across Africa and particularly Nigeria. But looking at Africa, the other day, the WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, did say that Africa only accounts currently for 1.5% of total COVID-19 cases that we are seeing. I wanted to ask you, does this make you hopeful, or are you worried that maybe we are not carrying out with the right protocol and measures to really and truly see what the situation is or possibly could be in a couple of weeks' time?
I think, to be truthful to ourselves, we're not testing enough. Africa is not testing enough. If we're testing enough, maybe we will find that we have higher rates of infection. And if we are not recording the deaths enough, we know what has gone around in some states in Nigeria. And they tell you there is increased deaths, not associated, eventually some were associated. So our counts are not correct. Counts of death, counts of the infected people are not correct, because I know many people are not even going to the hospital. Many people are treating themselves at home, especially those with mild infections or mild symptoms. Many of them don't want to be stigmatized. Calling our hospital isolation centers did not help matter. You know, we should call them hospitals or treatment centers. Calling them isolation centers put some bit of stigma around it. And the truth is that, except in places, in some few places like Lagos, those centers are not quite very attractive for people who already have a mental issue, psychological issue, that they have this illness. Then you put them in some quarantine or some isolation centers that may not meet what they are used to. So that's why some began to go to private hospitals. And now that there's a lot of prescription on air, from Donald Trump to governor of Bauchi State, and some governors who have announced what they used for their treatment. Many Nigerians trust them. In the best of times, will not seek any prescription before they procure medicines. Not now that they can, if what they can use are locally available, you know. So we're not testing enough. We're not reporting enough. But we thank God, because the truth is that everybody, both internal and external, predicted worse outcomes in Africa. But I want to thank God that even if we are counting enough, it wouldn't be that kind of disaster that was predicted.
Well, Mazi, let me draw your attention to a press statement that the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria issued about 2 weeks ago with regard to the donation of a herbal remedy called COVID Organics to Nigeria by Madagascar. And in that statement, you had objected to that donation. You had called for greater investment in local remedies, given the vast resources of phytomedicinal plants in Nigeria. Since that protest, if I may use that word, has there been any development in a positive direction? Has there been any attempt by the relevant authorities to get in touch with the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria? Is there any dialogue going on that would seem like a response to the concern of the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria?
Yes, Dr. Ruben. I think for the first time, I must acknowledge that the government has shown some sensitivity and responsiveness. We have engaged with them. They even invited me to a meeting with where they followed our advice instead of sitting on the and waiting for people to come. Where they've invited some herbal scientists and some traditional medicine practitioners who have claims. I was involved in reviewing some of their claims and making suggestions as to those ones we believe could require government assistance for accelerated testing, both in terms of listing by NAFDAC and moving on to clinical evaluation. And beyond that, if you listen to the voices of government officials since then, everybody's talking about research, everybody's talking about looking inwards. So we have seen a positive development, and a few clinical trials are about to start, based on this effort. And those who have a cure or who have formulations that are effective one way or the other, many of them are now coming forward. The only thing we keep asking is that government should please not say this is individual or private ideas. Our proposition is that having identified 3 or 4 from the review we did that we think have the best opportunity to provide some help, either in treating symptoms or in actually being antiviral, that government should quickly support the clinical evaluation, because, as I said, clinical evaluation costs a lot of money and perhaps takes some time and some effort. Even to get clinicians agree to try herbal medicine is a lot of work. To get doctors agree to try them is work. Many of them, by their training, are disdainful of herbal or traditional medicine. So they don't by nature have a lot of confidence. So that's why it requires government intervention to direct that these trials be done. I believe that if that was done, there will be a prospect that something positive will come out from the trials. Additionally, we are also hoping that beyond this short-term effort, that they will go the whole hog and begin to mandate research institutes, the National Institute for Pharmaceutical Research and Development, National Institute for Medical Research, and all the institutes they have. They should begin to fund them appropriately and give them mandates. We have malaria, which we haven't dealt with. We have Lassa fever. We have several other tropical diseases that are becoming orphaned, sometimes just for Nigeria and a few Pakistan and Afghanistan. I think we need to focus on those things, and we can produce solutions to them through our own local flora and fauna. So I think that short answer to your question, we have seen a positive response, we have seen engagement, and the rhetorics and the narrative is changing, and everybody's talking now about looking inwards. Our prayer is that it does not end in talk, that we see it to fruition, so that will mark our best benefit from this COVID-19 in healthcare, especially, that we're beginning to think about inwards. The other day I heard that government has mandated some colleges of medicine to be elevated, to set up certain structures, about 6 or so in different geopolitical zones. That is good, but as you know, it's not the first time that happened. Right from President Obasanjo through Yar'Adua to Jonathan, they had similar opportunities. I even served in one committee when Professor Shotamihen was Minister of Health to try and identify 4 universities that we raised to a global standard. All our recommendations, we don't know how far they were implemented. So I'm cautiously hopeful that these efforts that we have seen now will be sustained so that Nigeria will stop being the beggar nation or dependent nation on simple things that we can do for ourselves. That's the main message.
Mr. Ohuabunwa, thank you very much for that, and certainly. Now, I'd like to talk to you about the global race for a vaccine, which I'm very sure that you've been watching very closely, and 2 particular companies are sitting at the forefront currently, Moderna and Novavax. Now, Moderna reported that they did have some positive results in the early days or early stages of their trials, and Novavax, too, have just started their own trials. Now, a few weeks ago, our health agencies were telling us that even if a vaccine does come out this year or early next year, Nigeria will not necessarily be at the forefront of receiving that vaccine. However, I'm also aware that there are ways in which a country like Nigeria can put itself forward when it comes to being one of the first or towards the front in terms of countries receiving the vaccine when hopefully it is ready. Now, what are some of these measures that we can take? Should we be putting some citizens forward for some of these trials? What is your take?
Well, I believe that if you are not part of the cooking, you have to wait for those who cook the food to eat before they can remember you that is standing by. I believe that we may not have the technological ability right now, since we shut down our vaccine plant in Yaba. An effort to revive it through a PPP model has yet not fully been resolved. I think that our best bet is to participate through the clinical trials. And I was thinking that Nigeria should be participating in the trials. We should volunteer to participate because we are part of the global world. We won't wait for people to do things for us, as I said, and then we expect them to give us priority. It never happens. So in vaccine development right now, there are about 10 countries. Merck, Pfizer, I'm aware, are also in the race, and many other companies, about 10 or so in the US, in the UK, and other parts, even China. They are working hard. I think Nigeria should participate, especially the ones that are being moderated also by WHO because of WHO's central standing and the sophistication of the staff they have, and they're able to identify which of them has or which of them have the best potential to come to market fastest. So Nigeria should provide patients, volunteers who should participate in these trials. That way, we can have a claim that we participated in development of the vaccine, and therefore should demand that the earliest production throughputs, some should be allocated to Nigeria. But if we don't participate, then we'll have to join the queue, and that may take a longer time. That's my counsel.
Well, there's no doubt that COVID-19 drug, finding a cure to COVID-19, is a major global need of the hour. And, you've mentioned some of those pharmaceutical companies involved. But there is also another concern that while it is desirable to find a cure, and that where the race towards a cure is to be encouraged, that there is also the risk of profiteering. Is this a conspiracy theory, or is there an international system to prevent these big pharmas profiteering on the basis of whatever discovery that they come up with?
Well, traditionally, yeah, if there are two sides. If it comes to drug discovery for treatment of a disease like COVID-19, Ruben, it's a very expensive thing.
Well, Mazi,
when I was CEO of Pfizer, it used to be between...
Mazi,
yeah.
On that note, if I could just plead with you to hold your thoughts.
Yes.
We'll take a short commercial break, and then when we return, you tell us about how expensive it is and whether that is a justification for profiteering. We'll be right back. It's still The Morning Show here on Arise News. Welcome back to The Morning Show here on the Arise News channel. Still with us is Mazi Ohuabunwa, President of Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria, who has been commenting on the WHO, the clinical trial of hydroxychloroquine, and other related issues. Mazi, you were talking about how expensive it is to produce a drug.
Yes, Ruben. I say that it's an expensive thing. Way back, it used to be a minimum of about $500 million to be able to bring a product to the market. But now, with the changes in technology and regulatory demands and the extent of clinical evaluations that need to be done, I guess we might be talking about between $800 million to about $1 billion. And for each one that comes to the market, about 10 at least have failed. Even if they showed initial efficacy, maybe during phase 3 clinical trials, they may be found to also have deleterious effects or side effects that will make them not be commercialized. So it's an expensive thing, and therefore when you're able to have a breakthrough, you are given a patent, and that patent allows you to sell the drug exclusively for a given number of years to allow you regain the costs that you have invested in the research, so that you can reinvest in other research, because soon as the patent expires, prices fall, because other manufacturers can then copy what you have done and then begin to produce even cheaper than you can produce it, especially our global partners in India and China. Companies will not normally profiteer, but they will sell at a cost recovery pricing level that will enable them to recover their cost and then be able to return some investment, because it is business. And now in a global world where there is competition, it's also difficult for you to profiteer these days, because as you said, even in the vaccine, which is such a risky business to do, you have more than 10 companies that are already fast ahead in the race. So there's a race. And profiteering doesn't happen easily in multinational business, because it is competitive. Then secondly, regulatory agencies also play a role. Even where there's no price controls, they play a role. They can intervene, especially for things that are used for public health, like vaccines, for example. This is why it's becoming a global effort, because many people are putting money together, so it will be easier. The other day I heard that the U.S. government gave $1 billion to one of the companies made a promise of invested $1 billion, which was a guarantee that they will buy the product. So that is upfront payment, and that will help to reduce their cost of research and production. So profiteering as a word, yes, can happen, because we are in a system where people may play dirty or be unfair. But as a standard for global pharmaceutical companies, many of them have gone beyond the stage where they have overcome such mundane things as trying to take unnecessary advantage, because many of them are there for the long term. And some of these diseases, I know companies that have made products at high expense and were donating them free products for treating night blindness, for example, by Merck and a few other companies, MSD, they were making these products and giving them out free because for one, they found that people couldn't even afford to pay for them. So they just took them as part of their corporate social responsibility. So I don't think there's an opportunity for profiteering in a competitive global market where China has 5 countries already ahead in vaccine. America has 4. UK has some. Australia. Everybody. So by the time you come on stream, before you know it, the other person has come on stream, and then you have the products. You can't afford to overprice or outprice yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Ohuabunwa. Now, I'd like to take you back to something that you said before we went on a break, where you mentioned that back in the 70s and 80s, we were producing vaccines here in Nigeria, and I believe that would have been at the Federal Vaccine Production Lab in Yaba, where we were producing yellow fever vaccines, etc. So, I mean, we're noting here that really and truly we're going backwards. But you said that there are public-private partnerships looking at reviving the vaccine laboratory or the production of the vaccine production laboratory. Can you tell us more about efforts in this regard?
Well, I'm aware that at some point, maybe about 10 years ago or thereabouts, the federal government decided to ask for private interest, for people to do private expression of interest in partnering with them to revive that lab. I'm aware that many companies bidded. I'm aware that one company was selected, May & Baker, and I'm aware that they have formed a joint partnership between May & Baker and the federal government. But as I speak to you, the laboratory is not yet producing anything. I believe that a lot of investment may be going on. I don't have all that detail to restructure, re-equip, modernize the plant, because of course what was there in the 80s or 90s will no longer be suitable for today's vaccine manufacturing or even vaccine research, because there are septic techniques, the sterile room techniques that exist now. It's light years away from what it was in the 80s or 70s. So I'm aware that they are working, but you see, like I said, I've always known that it's tough to do business with government. It's very tough because their motivation sometimes is not in sync with the motivation of the private sector. Private sector would like to move fast and get jobs done and then optimize the opportunities. But the governments, of course, would like to protect the public, but their speed sometimes can be a little bit disconcerting. And sometimes you're also surprised that personal interests may come in, and that would derail taking the right decisions with the right speed at the right time. I'm not in May & Baker, I don't have all the information, but I believe from my experience in dealing with government and in some of the PPPs that we have heard, I know this might be some of the issues. If you want to take a decision in a joint venture, you have to go through the officer in charge. He now goes to his own boss, who goes to the PAMSEC, who goes to the minister, and the minister may have to go to the president. And all of us know the long journey you have to do to the president or to the minister, and before you come back, But in the private sector, decisions are taken much faster. The board can meet and take a decision. And because they are driven by profit, they are investment driven and profit driven. They may have borrowed money from banks, and they know that this money has to be paid back, monthly interest, and then annual, repayment of the capital. And banks don't forgive you, whether it is Sunday or Saturday, whether it's public holiday. Banks charge you interest on every money they've lent you. So private sector people are eager to get business done, but it doesn't always work the same way with governments all over the world, worse in the third world. So I think these are some of the challenges that project may be having. Since it's a joint venture, even the selection of staff, the remuneration of staff will be not as competitive as you would if it was entirely a private sector, because you'll be balancing it with what people in government earn and what people in private sector earn. Those kind of things can cause challenges. But government knows what is best for the people, so I cannot challenge their decision. PPP is good if it is properly defined and the private sector given a controlling mandate. So these are the issues, because I know that if it was purely a private sector project, by now, some vaccine, even if it's the lower vaccines, measles vaccine, the old yellow fever vaccine, which they still demand that if anybody going out of this country must take or show evidence that he has had a yellow fever vaccination. Such ones, I'm sure they will have been doing, and maybe may have even participated now in this global rush for COVID-19 if they had been properly set up. So this is much I know, and I believe that Mayor Baker may be able to provide more up-to-date information on this.
Well, Mazi, we'll be wrapping this up shortly, but I would like you to comment on the politics of vaccine development. The politics of vaccine development with regard to the fact that we talked about competition, race, rush, but it looks like many countries are competing who will get there first. Would that have implications for how quickly we get a cure to coronavirus?
Well, you had Mr. Trump said they have no ego. For the first time, I had him talk about ego. He said they have no ego. So whoever comes first, they will buy from them or cooperate with them. So yes, there is some politics. It's in geopolitics, people measure so many things as we poor people measure. My house is bigger than yours. My car is bigger than yours. They also measure those kind of things at that level. Who comes first, especially now that there's competition for global leadership between America and China. America would not want China to come first in producing vaccine.
Well, thank you
and
very
that's
much.
why Donald Trump is training everything.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
Absolutely.